I'd like to welcome everyone officially to the American Foreign Service Association, AFSA. My name is Ian Houston. I'm the Executive Director of AFSA. I'm noticing that some of you have a perfect attendance record for these events, so we very much appreciate that. We are certainly very grateful for our guests and for our members and special guests that we may have here today. We run all these programs, both this series and our AFSA Book Notes programs and other discussions under the banner of the Fund for American Diplomacy. There's some information on your chairs about the fund and what the fund does. I'd like to particularly thank our many individual contributors, AFSA members and others who contribute a little bit here and there to the FAD. It certainly makes a difference and puts us in a position where we can run these types of programs. I certainly would like to thank the generous support of the Lockheed Martin Corporation, who has made these discussions possible, and thank Lockheed Martin for their support, and also more generally the AFSA staff for the support that they provide in coordinating these events. I would also like to recognize the Foreign Service Journal. The Foreign Service Journal, we do try to couple these discussions with various pieces that appear in the journal. And they had the great insight, the editorial board and the staff of the Foreign Service Journal, to come up with a topic back in February. The issue was titled Think Globally, Act Nationally. And it had several pieces in there that focused on commercial diplomacy and economic development from a private sector standpoint. We even had Ambassador Larson provided a piece for that particular issue. I'd really like to thank Steve Honley and Susan Matra, two editors of the journal, and also Ted Wilkinson, who is here, the chairman of the editorial board of the Foreign Service Journal. Thank you for all that you do. I'd like to also recognize Keith Curtis. Keith Curtis is the vice president for the Foreign Commercial Service at AFSA, serves on our governing board and does such a terrific job for that constituency. So thank you, Keith, for being here. Very quickly, want to just thank WETA, which has provided great support for AFSA in covering these events. This particular event will be on the WETA website at a later date, and we'll refer that over to you. So thank you to WETA and that partnership that we have. I have the good fortune of working with a lot of good creative people at AFSA, and that creativity really stems from the top, the energy and support. And so it's really my pleasure to introduce the presiding officer of AFSA, AFSA's president, Susan Johnson, who will introduce the remainder of the program and our guest. Susan.
Well, thank you very much, Ian, and thank all of you for being with us, and thank our panelists in particular for coming together in at a very timely moment. It's really a pleasure to welcome you all. These events are helping AFSA raise our profile at a moment when we very much want to do that. So there are many reasons why we appreciate this. But I'd just like to jump in and say that economic and commercial diplomacy are vital elements of the Foreign Service and extremely important to our economy and to the American people as a whole. And so I'm really pleased to be able at this moment, when federal government and federal employees are being questioned at best, if not criticized, or as to their relevance or as to their role or as to their contribution to our nation's interests and our prosperity, I think it's particularly fitting that we are gathered this afternoon to hear from three people who have had really distinguished careers in the area of economic, commercial diplomacy and trade promotion. I like to quote, I guess, a statistic that Keith Curtis has brought to our attention. And if there's anyone here who could give us a more up-to-date number on it, but it's for every dollar that we invest in commercial diplomacy and in the Foreign Commercial Service, we see about a $500 return. And that's a good investment by any standard. And I think it's one that's been rising. So this afternoon, it's really a pleasure for me to be able to introduce three people who bring great perspective and expertise to this issue. Ambassador Alan Larson currently serves on the McLarty Associates Board of Counselors and is a senior international policy advisor at Covington and Burling. Ambassador Charles Ford, I know him as Chuck Ford, Deputy Director General of the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service and Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Commerce. And I'd just like to say I certainly congratulate and am pleased to see him in that position, but it meant that I kind of lost him for some AFSA assignments that I was hoping to have him for. But anyway, I'm willing to sacrifice for that cause. And finally, last but not least at all, Ambassador Sean Donnelly, a former Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for Europe and the Middle East, and many other impressive assignments, and you see them all on the bio sheet, so I won't list them all. But Ambassador Donnelly will also, in addition to being one of our panelists, be serving as moderator for the discussion. And as many of you know, because I know that you are colleagues, many of you have worked with the people who are going to be speaking with us this afternoon, they all have decades of experience working on economic and trade issues at the Departments of State and Commerce, as well as in the private sector. So I think this is a chance really to have some interesting, useful discussion in an informal context where we'll hopefully have time for some good Q&A from an informed and interested audience. So I'd like to just, with no further ado, turn the discussion over to Ambassador Donnelly.
Great.